At first light, the Alps breathe. A pale ribbon of dawn slides across their summits, igniting snowfields in soft gold and turning shadows into long, silent rivers that spill down into the valleys below. The air is thin, untouched, and still, broken only by the distant crack of ice shifting on a glacier older than memory itself. These mountains do not announce themselves loudly. They simply stand. Rising like a vast stone wall across the heart of Europe, the Alps form a landscape where earth meets sky in a dialogue millions of years in the making. Their peaks pierce the clouds, not in defiance but in quiet permanence. Here, time moves differently. Human centuries pass like moments, while rock remembers pressure, heat, and transformation stretching back into deep geological time. For thousands of years, people have approached these mountains with awe and caution. Ancient travelers saw them as barriers placed by the gods. Empires measured their strength against Alpine passes. Monks sought solitude in their heights. Climbers chased their summits, driven by curiosity, fear, and the desire to touch the unreachable. The Alps have shaped everything around them: winds and rivers, borders and cultures, myths and nations. From their frozen crowns flow Europe's great rivers, carrying life to distant plains. From their valleys emerged languages, traditions, and ways of life forged in isolation and endurance. Yet the Alps are not frozen in time. They are alive, breathing with the seasons, reshaped by snow and sun, vulnerable to forces now moving faster than ever before. Glaciers retreat. Forests climb higher. The ancient balance between stone, ice, and life begins to shift. This is not just the story of mountains. It is the story of a living system, of collision and creation, survival and adaptation, beauty and fragility. This is the story of the Alps, the roof of Europe, a monument of stone and silence, and a mirror reflecting humanity's place within the natural world. The Alps are among the greatest mountain systems on Earth, both in scale and complexity. Stretching in a broad arc of nearly 1,200 kilometers, they span the heart of Europe, crossing 8 modern nations: France, Switzerland, Italy, Austria, Germany, Slovenia, Liechtenstein, and Monaco. Despite political borders, the Alps exist as a single geological entity, one continuous structure shaped by forces far older than any human boundary. Their story begins deep beneath an ancient ocean. More than 100 million years ago, the region where the Alps now rise was submerged beneath the Tethys Ocean, a vast tropical sea separating the African and Eurasian tectonic plates. Over millions of years, sediments, shells, coral, and marine organisms settled on the ocean floor, forming thick layers of limestone and sedimentary rock. Then the Earth moved. As the African plate slowly drifted northward, it collided with Eurasia in a process that unfolded over tens of millions of years. The ocean between them vanished, crushed and folded under immense pressure. The seabed buckled, cracked, and rose skyward. Rock layers were pushed over one another in massive sheets known as naps, some traveling hundreds of kilometers from their original position. What emerged from this collision was the Alpine mountain chain, a landscape born not from volcanic eruption, but from compression, folding, and uplift. Fossilized seashells can still be found near Alpine summits, silent evidence of the ocean that once lay where snow now falls. The Alps are commonly divided into 3 main regions. The Western Alps, home to dramatic massifs like Mont Blanc, are steep, jagged, and dominated by towering peaks. The Central Alps, stretching across Switzerland, contain some of the highest and most glaciated terrain. The Eastern Alps, broader and more eroded, extend toward Austria and Slovenia, characterized by rolling ridges and expansive forests. Once uplifted, erosion took control. Ice became the Alps' most powerful sculptor. During successive ice ages, enormous glaciers flowed through valleys like slow-moving rivers of stone and snow. They carved deep U-shaped valleys, sharpened ridges into knife-like arete, and left behind cirques, moraines, and alpine lakes when they retreated. Water and wind continued the work. Rivers cut deep gorges, frost shattered rock faces, gravity pulled debris downward, reshaping slopes again and again. Even today, the Alps are not finished. The mountains continue to rise by a few millimeters each year, pushed upward by tectonic forces, while erosion steadily wears them down. It is a delicate balance, creation and destruction happening simultaneously. The Alps are not static monuments. They are a living geological process, still moving, still changing, still telling the story of a planet in motion. Climate in the Alps is shaped by height, exposure, and movement of air, water, and seasons. Nowhere else in Europe do such dramatic changes occur over such short distances. A warm valley floor and a frozen summit may exist only a few kilometers apart, yet belong to entirely different worlds. Altitude is the dominant force. With every rise in elevation, temperatures fall sharply, thinning the air and shortening the growing season. Winters lengthen, summers shrink, and survival becomes increasingly precise. Above the tree line, storms arrive without warning, sunlight burns more intensely, and snow can fall even in midsummer. The Alps act as a powerful climatic barrier. Moist air from the Atlantic is forced upward as it meets the mountains, cooling rapidly and releasing heavy precipitation. Northern slopes receive deep snowfall and frequent rain, feeding glaciers and rivers that flow toward the North Sea and the Black Sea. Southern slopes, influenced by Mediterranean air, are often warmer and drier, shaped by sunlight and seasonal winds such as the föhn, warm, dry gusts capable of melting snow within hours. This interaction between elevation and weather creates a vertical stacking of ecosystems. At lower altitudes, deciduous forests thrive in milder conditions. Higher up, coniferous woods dominate, adapted to cold and snow-laden winters. Beyond them lie alpine meadows, briefly transformed each summer into fields of color and life. Above this fragile band, vegetation gives way to rock, ice, and thin air. Seasonality governs every rhythm. Spring arrives late, often violently, as snowmelt releases torrents of water into valleys. Summer is short but intense, marked by long daylight and rapid growth. Autumn cools the air and sets forests ablaze with gold and amber. Winter claims the land in silence, sealing ecosystems beneath deep snow and ice. These patterns have shaped the Alps into one of Europe's most complex ecological systems, beautiful, resilient, and increasingly vulnerable. Life in the Alps exists at the edge of possibility. Plants and animals here endure long winters, fierce winds, thin soils, and sudden storms. Survival is not accidental. It is the result of thousands of years of adaptation, refinement, and balance. Alpine plants grow low to the ground, hugging the earth to avoid cold winds and conserve warmth. Many possess thick, waxy leaves that reduce moisture loss, while others are covered in fine hairs that reflect ultraviolet radiation and trap heat. The famous Edelweiss, often seen as a symbol of the Alps, thrives in rocky soil where few competitors can survive. When summer arrives, it does so briefly and without mercy. Meadows erupt into color almost overnight. Gentians, alpine roses, buttercups, and saxifrages racing against time to bloom, pollinate, and seed before snow returns. These high-altitude meadows are among the most biodiverse habitats in Europe, sustaining insects, birds, and grazing animals in a fragile seasonal harmony. Animal life mirrors this precision. The Alpine ibex moves across sheer cliffs with astonishing ease, its hooves designed to grip stone. Chamois leap across slopes where humans struggle to stand. Marmots live underground, whistling warnings before retreating into burrows where they hibernate for up to 8 months beneath the snow. Birds rule the skies, Golden eagles soar on thermal currents rising from sun-warmed slopes, while bearded vultures, once driven to extinction, have returned, dropping bones from great heights to access the marrow within. Smaller birds migrate seasonally, escaping winter's grip before returning in spring. Predators tell a quieter story. Wolves, lynx, and brown bears once roamed freely across the Alps before human expansion forced them into retreat. In recent decades, careful conservation has allowed some of these species to return, reshaping ancient ecological relationships and sparking new conversations about coexistence. Every species in the Alps is part of a finely tuned system. When one element shifts, temperature, snowfall, vegetation, the effects ripple outward. The beauty of alpine life lies not in abundance, but in balance. Here, survival is art, and life endures, carved into stone, shaped by snow, and sustained by the fragile rhythms of the mountains. For as long as humans have looked toward the Alps, they have seen more than mountains. They have seen presence, powerful, silent, and eternal. To early societies, the Alps were realms of the unknown. Their peaks vanished into storms, their valleys echoed with avalanches, and their passes tested the limits of endurance. These landscapes inspired reverence and fear in equal measure. Many ancient cultures believed mountains were the dwelling places of gods and spirits, guardians of the boundary between earth and sky. When the Roman Empire expanded northward, the Alps became both obstacle and opportunity. Roman engineers carved roads and tunnels through the mountains, transforming natural barriers into arteries of trade and military movement. Passes such as the Great St. Bernard became lifelines between civilizations, binding the Mediterranean world to northern Europe. Even today, the traces of Roman stonework remain embedded in alpine paths. During the Middle Ages, isolation shaped identity. Communities tucked into valleys developed distinct languages, dialects, and traditions, preserved by geography and necessity. Alpine culture grew from resilience, music echoing across slopes, seasonal festivals marking the return of light, and architectural forms designed to withstand snow, wind, and time. Spiritual life found refuge in the heights. Monasteries and hermitages were built in improbable locations, perched on cliffs or nestled in high valleys. These places offered solitude and reflection, drawing monks and pilgrims seeking meaning beyond the material world. The mountains became symbols of purification, spaces where the soul could rise above the noise of civilization. Folklore filled the alpine landscape with stories. Spirits guarded forests. Avalanches were seen as divine warnings. Peaks carried names that reflected awe, danger, or reverence. These myths were not mere superstition. They were ways of understanding a powerful environment that demanded respect. In the modern age, the Alps transformed from sacred barriers into cultural symbols. They came to represent endurance, freedom, and the sublime, an overwhelming beauty that humbles the human spirit. Painters, poets, and philosophers found in the Alps a mirror for inner struggle and transcendence. Even today, the Alps continue to shape cultural identity. Traditional farming practices, seasonal migrations of livestock, and deep-rooted customs persist alongside modern life. The mountains remain not just a backdrop, but an active force in shaping belief, tradition, and meaning. Human life in the Alps began long before written history. Archaeological evidence reveals that people crossed alpine passes thousands of years ago, following game trails and seasonal routes. The discovery of Ötzi the Iceman, preserved in ice for over 5,000 years, offers a rare glimpse into early alpine survival, proving that humans adapted to these heights far earlier than once believed. Permanent settlement followed necessity. Early communities learned to farm steep slopes, terrace land, and herd animals across high pastures during summer months. This seasonal rhythm, moving livestock upward in warm months and downward in winter, became a defining pattern of alpine life, shaping landscapes that still exist today. For centuries, the Alps were seen as dangerous and largely unconquerable. Travelers crossed them out of obligation, not curiosity. Peaks were avoided, believed to be cursed or meaningless wastelands of ice and rock. That perception changed dramatically in the late 18th century. The birth of mountaineering coincided with the Enlightenment, when curiosity replaced fear. In 1786, the first successful ascent of Mont Blanc marked a turning point, not only in exploration, but in humanity's relationship with mountains. What was once avoided became a challenge, a goal, and a symbol of human ambition. The 19th century ushered in the golden age of alpinism. Climbers, scientists, and adventurers mapped glaciers, measured altitudes, and named peaks. Local guides, often farmers and hunters, became legends, leading expeditions across ice and rock with skill born of lived experience. Exploration fueled science. Glaciology, meteorology, and geology advanced rapidly through Alpine study. Mountains became open-air laboratories, revealing clues about Earth's climate, structure, and past. In the modern era, mountaineering evolved into sport, recreation, and personal pursuit. Advances in equipment made the high Alps more accessible, while climbing ethics shifted toward respect, safety, and preservation. Yet the spirit remains unchanged. Every ascent echoes the same impulse: to stand on the edge between earth and sky, to test limits, and to feel, if only briefly, the vastness of the world beneath one's feet. The Alps have long served as a mirror for human imagination. Their vastness, light, and silence have inspired artists, challenged scientists, and drawn travelers from across the world, each seeking something different, yet finding themselves shaped by the same towering presence. In art, the Alps became a symbol of the sublime. Romantic painters of the 18th and 19th centuries captured their dramatic contrasts: dark valleys beneath radiant summits, storms gathering over peaks, solitary figures dwarfed by stone and sky. These images did more than depict landscapes. They conveyed emotion, awe, and humanity's smallness in the face of nature. Writers and poets followed, describing the Alps as places of both terror and transcendence, where beauty and danger existed side by side. For science, the Alps became a natural laboratory. Early geologists studied folded rock layers to understand the Earth's structure. Glaciologists measured ice movement and seasonal change, uncovering the dynamic nature of glaciers once thought eternal. Meteorologists observed how mountains shape weather, advancing knowledge still used today in climate modeling. Many foundational theories about climate, erosion, and plate tectonics were refined through Alpine research. As understanding grew, access followed. The 19th and early 20th centuries transformed the Alps into a destination. Railways pierced valleys once reachable only by foot or mule. Cable cars and mountain hotels brought visitors into high altitudes with unprecedented ease. Winter sports reshaped entire regions, turning snow into economic opportunity, and alpine villages into global resorts. Modern tourism now defines much of alpine life. Millions arrive each year to ski, hike, climb, and simply stand before the peaks. For many, the Alps offer escape, a return to silence, clean air, and open horizons. For local communities, tourism brings livelihoods, cultural exchange, and connection to the wider world. Yet this popularity comes at a cost. Infrastructure alters landscapes. Seasonal crowds strain fragile ecosystems. The challenge lies in preserving what draws people to the Alps in the first place: the sense of scale, purity, and wonder. The Alps are changing, and the changes are visible. Temperatures in the Alpine region are rising at nearly twice the global average. Glaciers that once flowed slowly and steadily are retreating at alarming rates, some losing entire centuries of ice in a single human lifetime. Where thick ice once carved valleys, bare rock now emerges, reshaping the landscape year by year. This retreat affects more than scenery. Glaciers act as natural reservoirs, releasing water gradually through warmer months. As they shrink, water systems become less predictable, threatening ecosystems, agriculture, and communities far beyond the mountains themselves. Permafrost, once frozen solid within high-altitude rock, begins to thaw. Slopes grow unstable. Rockfalls and landslides increase in frequency, altering climbing routes and endangering settlements. Forests creep higher as temperatures rise, while alpine species are pushed upward, squeezed between warming valleys and barren summits. Wildlife patterns shift. Some species adapt, others struggle to survive. Seasonal rhythms, flowering, migration, hibernation, fall out of sync, disrupting delicate ecological relationships refined over thousands of years. Human pressure compounds these changes. Expanding infrastructure, mass tourism, and energy demands place additional strain on fragile environments. What was once considered timeless now reveals its vulnerability. The Alps, long symbols of permanence and strength, are becoming indicators, early warnings of a planet in transition. Their transformation is not distant or abstract. It is happening now, written in melting ice, shifting forests, and silent valleys where glaciers once spoke. As the Alps change, so too does humanity's responsibility toward them. Across the mountain range, nations, scientists, and local communities are working to protect what remains fragile, yet vital. Large portions of the Alps are now safeguarded by national parks and protected landscapes, preserving habitats where natural processes can continue with minimal human interference. These spaces allow forests to regenerate, wildlife to migrate, and ecosystems to adapt at their own pace. International cooperation plays a crucial role. The Alps do not belong to one country, and neither do the challenges they face. Cross-border agreements promote sustainable land use, responsible tourism, and the protection of shared water systems that millions depend upon downstream. Scientific monitoring tracks glacier loss, biodiversity shifts, and climate trends, turning the mountains into sentinels that warn of broader planetary change. Local stewardship remains just as important. Alpine farmers preserve traditional practices that maintain biodiversity-rich meadows. Conservation groups reintroduce native species and restore natural corridors that allow wildlife to move freely across fragmented landscapes. Tourism, once focused solely on expansion, increasingly turns toward sustainability, reducing environmental impact while preserving cultural heritage. Yet the future of the Alps cannot be secured by protection alone. It depends on global choices, on emissions reduced far beyond the mountains themselves, and on a renewed understanding of humanity's place within natural systems. The Alps have endured immense forces over millions of years. Their survival now rests on decisions made within a single century. The Alps rise still, silent, immense, and luminous beneath shifting skies. They are a crown of stone and snow, shaped by collision, carved by ice, and softened by time. In their peaks and valleys, the story of Earth unfolds, of creation and erosion, balance and change. And within that story, humanity has found challenge, refuge, and inspiration. For centuries, the Alps seemed eternal. Their glaciers felt immovable, their ridges unbreakable. Yet today, they remind us that even the strongest landscapes are delicate, that beauty endures not through dominance, but through harmony. The mountains reflect who we are. They record our ambition in roads and resorts, our curiosity in science and exploration, and our capacity for care in acts of protection and restraint. How we treat the Alps is a measure of how we choose to live alongside the natural world. To stand among these peaks is to feel both small and connected, to recognize that survival, whether of a mountain ecosystem or a human society, depends on balance. The Alps do not ask to be conquered. They ask to be understood. And as their glaciers whisper away into history, they leave us with a choice: to listen, to protect, and to ensure that this fragile crown of stone and snow continues to rise, not only in height, but in meaning.